Welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast. We just finished up giving out grades for the biggest moves of free agency this past week. That did include briefly at the end the Keenan Allen move to Chicago. So that is what we will be getting into, along with a handful of other transactions that have gone down in the past 24 hours. But as we sort of alluded to, Keenan Allen, the six-time Pro Bowler for the Chargers, was just traded to the Chicago Bears for just a fourth-round pick. This is a couple things here. This speaks more so to the overall situation about the Chargers, which we will also be diving into as the show goes on here. But the Chargers are in a very difficult financial situation. Keenan Allen was just about to make almost $35 million against the cap for the Chargers next season, and in an attempt to cut down on it, they send him to the Bears. Now, for the Bears, I love this move because they are able to pair him up with DJ Moore, and whoever's going to be in at quarterback for them next season gets another weapon. I do think that this probably further indicates that we are going to get Caleb Williams, or should they like somebody else in the draft, maybe one of them. Jaden Daniels has gotten some buzz, but it is likely going to be, I think, Caleb Williams. And just with the fact that now Keenan Allen will be an expiring free agent after this season, but I also do feel like there is some level of they aren't going to want to spend the money on Justin Fields. Keenan Allen is a big dollar amount this year. I feel like they're probably going to try and want to work out something a little bit longer term. Now, maybe that doesn't happen. Keenan Allen, granted, is also going into his age 32 season, but he's coming off of one of the best years of his career, where he had 108 catches, over 1,200 yards, 7 touchdowns. He set a franchise record for the Chargers last year in terms of receptions. So I feel like the Bears are going to be pretty interested in wanting to keep him past this season. Maybe that's not the case. We'll have to see how the fit works out necessarily. But this is another example of the Bears trying to capitalize as much as possible on this season, on this offseason, to put as much talent as possible around the quarterback position. GM Ryan Poles knows that his job is pretty much on the line in terms of making sure that this next quarterback succeeds. It was just a couple seasons ago where the Bears traded a second-round pick that ended up being the 32nd overall pick. There were only 31 draft picks in the first round, but that ended up being the 32nd overall pick in the draft for Chase Claypool, who was a disaster there in Chicago and really never panned out at all. So this is an incredible upgrade in terms of the quality of move that Poles was able to pull off in acquiring some receiver talent. So I love this for the Bears. Again, still a lot to be seen here. We don't know who's going to be the quarterback for them next season, but this should definitely help make whoever it will be in an easier position. Last night we also had Marquise Hollywood Brown signing with the Kansas City Chiefs. This was a 1-year deal, and this is a very interesting one to me, where Marquise Brown has been a little bit of a disappointment, I feel like, since coming into the NFL. He was a first-round pick in 2019. What Zay Flowers was this past season was sort of what the Ravens were hoping he would be when they drafted him in 2019, but that was never the case. He did ultimately, in his third season, end up turning in a 1,000-yard year, but ultimately, drops have been an issue with him, the consistency, and we know that he is a burner and he has some of that big-time talent. It just hasn't fully played out that way through the first handful of his years. he got a little bit of a short end of the stick when he went to Arizona. He was traded to the Cardinals ahead of the 2022 season, and he spent a lot of time waiting for a actual franchise quarterback to be there. Kyler Murray was dealing with injuries, which hurt him, but last year he had just under 600 yards as a whole, so he's betting on himself with this one-year deal. Still gets, I believe it was $11 million, so a pretty nice payout for somebody who I guess you could say hasn't really proven anything in the past couple seasons, but I am a believer in at least the talent, and I think that this is a big-time win for the Kansas City Chiefs, who of course had so much drama, almost at least national dialogue, talking about the wide receiver position for them last year. And now they bring in Hollywood, who is the best receiver, in theory, that they've had since Tyreek Hill left in that trade. So, again, is he a home run? Maybe not necessarily. But for him personally, coming into this Chiefs offense, playing with Patrick Mahomes is pretty much the perfect way for him to try and revamp his career. The question is, will that happen? We will still have to see on that one, but I do think that this is a nice fit where they've been linked a lot to Xavier Worthy, the receiver out of Texas that is the speedster. Hollywood Brown has a lot of that same athleticism as well, and maybe not, 4.21 speed or whatever it was that Worthy ran in the 40-yard dash at the combine, but he can still fly as well. And this is a nice move here where if Hollywood is going to end up being a high-quality receiver, he's going to display it this season. The Chiefs are at a desperate need for the wide receiver position. He's going to get plenty of opportunities. We will see how this plays out. And then the final move that we're going to be talking about in this segment is a trade that broke this morning in terms of an exchange of draft capital where the Minnesota Vikings and Houston Texans swapped some picks. That leads to an interesting conversation about what is next to come about the Vikings draft, where we saw them acquire a second first-round pick in the upcoming 2024 draft. They traded their second rounder, which was number 42 overall, a sixth rounder, number 188, and a second rounder in next year's draft to get number 23 from the Texans and a seventh rounder as well. But they now sit with 2 first-round picks, which leads me to believe that they are potentially going to look to package these together to move up in the upcoming draft. The Vikings, of course, just lost Kirk Cousins in free agency, and now they are at a little bit of a situation here where they spend $10 million to sign Sam Darnold to a one-year contract, but that is not really a franchise quarterback move. Now, maybe there are some people out there who still believe in Sam Darnold. I was there at one point. I just feel like the way that the first few seasons played out in the Jets is a little bit he can't recover from that. So that leads the question of, well, are they going to draft a quarterback? And they were sitting at the 11th overall pick. They still have that one, but that is their highest draft pick, which is out of reach, of course, from a top 3 guy. It's the first 3 picks, at least 3 of the top 4 picks, and if you want to slide Marvin Harrison Jr. somewhere in that top 3, at least 3 of the first 4 will be used on quarterbacks. It's going to be some combination, some order of Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, and Drake May. Now, there's been some buzz about Michigan's J.J. McCarthy as well. Penix could slide into a first rounder. He was initially projected to be a day 2 pick, but has seemingly really impressed from the combine. Bo Nix is somebody that's also in the conversation as well. But for the Vikings here, It seems like they are probably going to want to trade up, I would imagine, in the top 3. I'm just personally not a believer in J.J. McCarthy, in Bo Nix. I mean, I think that Bo Nix can be a fine pro. I think that Michael Penix can be a fine pro. J.J. McCarthy, I still have more questions with, but I feel like if you're gearing up to do this, you want to make sure that it's somebody who is there are no such things as sure things in the NFL necessarily, especially when you're talking about drafting quarterbacks, but they also have this decision to make in terms of Justin Jefferson, their star wide receiver, and whether or not they're going to extend him, whether or not he's going to be happy playing in this offense without a real solidified quarterback. So this could potentially kill 2 birds with 1 stone in finding your next franchise guy, keeping at quarterback, keeping your franchise wide receiver happy as well, and move forward for the next handful of years. I think Kevin O'Connell is a very good offensive mind as a head coach, and I'm just curious to see where Minnesota is going to go from here. Ian Rappaport, I believe it was him, tweeted out that the Rams did a similar type of move or it was the Eagles making a similar type of move in the 2016 draft, where they ended up trading for number 2 overall. They took Carson Wentz in that instance, but we will see. It's curious to think about the teams that are in the top 3. I think there is still a chance that Justin Fields could return to Chicago. I highly doubt it, though, because at this point, no, they haven't received the compensation they were thinking that they could for Fields. But if they were convinced that they were going to move off from Fields going into the offseason, I don't think that it would be good business to then revert on that strategy because of the compensation. If you were going to keep Fields, you should have come out this offseason like you did last year and say, hey, we are not trading Justin Fields. He is our quarterback of the future. I mean, for Ryan Poles, the GM, I think that the risk reward for him is also much higher to take a new quarterback, reset that clock, because if Justin Fields were to burn out in Chicago and they passed up on the number 1 overall pick 2 seasons in a row, it's not even a question that he is done. That is assuming, of course, that some of these quarterbacks pan out, but we already saw CJ Stroud put together one of the best rookie seasons maybe in NFL history. Anthony Richardson showed flashes. Bryce Young hasn't quite yet, but was a very well-regarded talent coming into last year's draft as well, plus the top 3 guys you have in this year's draft. The Bears are going to probably stay at number 1, draft a quarterback there. The Commanders also seem like they are gearing up with some of their offseason moves that they want to bring in a quarterback. They just moved on from Sam Howell. They've added some pieces on offense, such as Austin Eckler, Tyler Biadasz, to try and solidify a little bit more around the quarterback position there. The Patriots are probably the most likely trade destination, at least in terms of the top 3. Now, again, if they're looking more so at a J.J. McCarthy, they could probably trade into 4 with Arizona, who they don't need a quarterback. I'm sure they would like to get Marvin Harrison Jr., but it's 3 or 4 that I feel like are the most attainable picks if you are trying to move up in this year's draft. I guess for me, as a Patriots fan, I'm a big believer in Drake May. I would be disappointed if he was sitting at number 3 overall and they didn't use the selection on him, but they obviously do have lots of holes on that offense. So I guess I could get comfortable with it, but that's what I would prefer to see. For the Cardinals, I'm sure, again, they would like a weapon like Marvin Harrison Jr. to help out and really try and get more answers on Kyler Murray, who's had one of the weirder career arcs from a highly drafted quarterback I feel like that we've seen in a while. But I think it would make a lot of sense for them. If there's a team that is desperate for a quarterback, they could probably still get a very solid return in exchange for that 4th overall pick. So we will have to see how this all plays out. We are just over a month away from the draft. So looking forward to it a ton, and we will be sure to keep you updated on all stories surrounding that. But for now, we are going to be taking our second break, and when we come back, I want to circle back around and get more into the Chargers and what the season ahead looks like for them under Jim Harbaugh. So stick with us, and we will be right back.